Hey, so I'm back today with another 10 movies from my top 100. So we're getting into like the first third basically being done. So this is going to be numbers 80 to 71. And again, quick disclaimer. Um, One, these are not the best movies of all time necessarily. They're my favorites. And two, this list has probably already changed since when I made it. The order has probably changed, but we're going with it anyway. So, I'm not saying all of a sudden I suddenly don't like these movies, but, it was kind of put together at one moment in time when these were the movies I liked the most, and this was the order I liked them in. So we're going to keep going with it. All right, so I'm going to start with number 80, and that is the movie Labyrinth. I feel like this is like a rite of passage for anyone born at in a certain like age range, certain year range. But yeah, Labyrinth was one of those 80s sort of fantasy movies that like everyone kind of saw and everyone liked. It was actually early Jim Henson as well. But if you're not familiar with it for whatever reason, it's about a girl who has to babysit her little brother. She's a teenager, she's mad, she doesn't want to have to stay home and babysit her little brother, so she's like, I hate you, I wish you didn't exist. And so then the Goblin King, because all you have to do is wish away a baby apparently, and the Goblin King will come take him. So the Goblin King, which is David Bowie, comes and takes him, and then she doesn't mean it, so she has to go into this like alternate world and try to save her baby brother. And it's musical, it's weird, and it's like, it definitely is a product of its time. Like, I feel like if you just went into it now with no like preparation for it, you'd be like, what is happening? But this was like big at the time, this kind of fantasy stuff, and obviously like again, Jim Henson was kind of like up and coming in the world and with like his effects and his puppetry, and so it's a little, obviously it's a little weird now, but it's still a really great movie. It for what it does, there's like a lot of really cool imagery, there's some really cool scenes, characters are great, so it still holds up even if it's kind of weird right now. So that's Labyrinth. And again, I mean, there's not a whole lot to say. It's very much, I feel like people of a certain age just have a lot of nostalgic connection to it regardless. And another one, so my number 79 is another one that I think is heavily, I would say heavily based on nostalgia. It is actually good and everything too, but again, this is the Nightmare on Elm Street series. I'm going to put, I put the first one because it's the first one. But, everybody was like a big fan of obviously slasher movies in the 80s and this kind of horror. But what I kind of liked about Nightmare on Elm Street was it was a slasher, but like a little paranormal. Obviously Freddy, but as you get later into the series, he becomes ridiculous. Like, he's like cracking jokes and stuff. But in the first one, he's pretty terrifying. And the idea of like a killer who can only get you when you're asleep is really kind of terrifying if you think about it, because, like, Jason's scary, but, you just don't go to the camp, or, but there's no safe way to escape a killer who's hunting you in your dreams, because you can't escape from him in your dreams. And obviously the concept's really cool. I thought it was terrifying when I was a kid. Obviously I don't find it as scary anymore, but I still think it holds up a lot, really well. And even if it is a little cheesy. And then as they continue, like, they get really good, and then they get kind of silly. But even when they're silly, they're like kind of like tongue-in-cheek and still respectful of like their fan base, so they're not like so silly that they just become bad. They're kind of playing with the fact that they know, like, you're here for like the sixth one, you've been here before, so but I thought they did a really good job. This is Wes Craven, I believe, too, so you can't really get better than that. So that's 79. 78 is Scott Pilgrim versus the World. And, I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's, the sort of like manic pixie dream girl or whatever. And like, yeah, I guess it has a lot of those tropes, but I think the thing I liked about Scott Pilgrim, and there's a few things. Obviously, I loved the like video game references. I thought it was really funny. I thought it was like really stylistically a cool, fun movie to look at. It does a really good job of capturing, like, the comic book feel as well. You know, it is a graphic novel. And it's pretty funny. Like, it's witty funny. Like, it doesn't, I mean, yeah, I guess it's a little weird that his, like, girlfriend's, like, a teenager, but it's not like, I don't think they're that far apart in age. They're only a couple of years, you know, and it's not like 19 and 20-year-olds don't date, like, 17-year-olds. I mean, again, like, also, he's kind of a loser, like, if we're honest about it. Like, I don't think he's, like, somebody's, like, goal. You know, and that's just kind of what is cute about it, too, is that, like, he's just a putz. But, you know, I don't think it takes itself that seriously. It's just kind of like a fun play on, like, if you took video game tropes and you took, like, some, like, a comic book elements and you tried to, like, merge them with, like, a cutesy YA romance, what would that look like? And so I think it's a really cute, like, fun way to kind of mix up genres. Plus, you know, the vegan police is hilarious, and this is as a vegetarian, like, you can't get offended by this stuff. And, like, the cast is phenomenal. So, like, I mean, you've got Kieran Culkin, you have Brie Larson, I think Chris Evans is in, or Chris Evans. You know, just a really good cast. And overall, like, the movie is just exceptionally well made. Obviously, Mary, I always want to call her Mary Stuart Masterson because that's the 80s girl, Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I love her. So, just a really fun overall movie. You know, it's a little higher up on my list because, like, so John can watch this movie, like, a million times, and, like, I don't know. I feel like it's a little too romancy for my taste. Like, eventually I'm just kind of like, whatever. But the jokes are still funny. So that would put us at, I think, 77. And this is a new movie. And so I don't know, over time this may, like, fall off or it may move higher. But it had a really, really impactful, sorry, I was temporarily interrupted there. So the next one, so I was saying it's a newer movie, and it just had a really strong impact on me when I saw it. I just was really moved by it. And this is Aftersun, and this is a smaller movie. It's Paul Mescal. I think it's, like, I guess he's really popular. He's on a TV show. I don't know if it's Sex Education or if it's something else, but he's on a TV show that's really popular, which I haven't seen him on. So this was, like, either the first or second time I'd seen him in anything. He's just, it's funny because I think he's fairly young, but he plays like a 30-year-old guy. And so I don't know if that's his age, but he works. But basically this is the story of a girl and her dad, and she has to spend a couple weeks with him. Her parents are divorced, and she's spending, like, a couple weeks in the summer with him on this vacation. And it's, like, it's a movie, like, you know, again, I don't know if anyone's, you know, who's watching this has seen The Florida Project. It's the kind of movie like that where, like, I can't say necessarily, and the plot's fine, obviously it's good, but it's just, there's a couple things I really liked about it. I mean, obviously the story is very impactful for me. I found it just very, like, moving, because basically it's about a man who struggles with depression, and his daughter, he's, like, trying not to be obvious about it, but he's really struggling, and it's her kind of, like, reflecting back on her relationship with her dad, now that she's older. So we don't really necessarily see her as she's older, but you can kind of tell that, like, the way the story's unfolding is she's revealing bits and pieces of these memories to us, like, because something is coming. And so there's that, like, unsettling feeling, for readers. Is kind of is why I love, like, Ian Reid books. It has that same kind of unsettling where it's, like, unsettling, but, you know, it's, like, it's creepy, but, you know, like, it's not actually a horror. It's more of, like, whatever is going to happen is going to just be, like, emotionally destructive. So that part is obviously really impactful, but I think the reason I compare, like, to Florida Project is I just found it so authentic. Like, because basically it's this, you know, this girl and her dad, and they're on this vacation, and he obviously doesn't have a lot of money, and they're at this kind of like resort, which is for like families, but you know, it's not like a super nice resort, and it just felt like such an honest portrayal of a relationship between a girl and her father, a relationship, you know, his struggle with depression, her kind of coming of age, and then all in this like very sort of normal, like typical kind of mediocre, I guess, like, you know, middle class, lower middle class, like summer vacation. You know, it's like where, and if you, I don't know, it might just, again, it might be a personal thing, but there's this like sense, like when you get older, when you look back at your childhood, you know, like my family and I, we used to go on vacation a lot, and like at the time, you know, the way you look at it is very different when you're older, and you start to realize like, oh, we stayed in that hotel or in those cabins, not because like my parents really wanted to stay there, but because they couldn't afford anything else. But so like they try to make it like this exciting, fun vacation, but there's like nothing to do. There's like literally nothing to do on this resort. And you know, he's trying to make this like a memorable, fun vacation. But like, again, I think she's like 13. So she's getting to that point where like, she's not entertained by like just going to the arcade and sitting around. And like, there's like older kids, but they're a little too old for her. So she can't really spend time with them. And then like, there's kiddie stuff, but there's nothing for like her in that sort of weird, awkward adolescent age. So just a lot of things. I just feel like the pieces in this just worked really well for me. So again, whether like it would have the same impact on me at a different time, or honestly, like whether it's as impactful for other people as it was for me, I don't know. But, you know, I just sometimes like a movie, and I mentioned this with like the last video, is like Columbus, it just really hit me at that point. And this was another one that I just think at that moment in time when I saw it, I was just blown away by it. And so that's why it's on this list. So the next one is going from, you know, like the small movie to this big Oscar movie, and, you know, super popular movie is Silence of the Lambs. And, you know, the thing with Silence of the Lambs that I find really interesting is, like, horror movies do not get Oscar nominations, as you know. And really it is a horror movie. It's just like a traditional sort of like serial killer, I mean, I guess maybe thriller more than horror movie. But it's not the kind of movie that gets Oscar nominations. And maybe every so often you get like a screenplay or you get, you know, an acting nomination. But, you know, for this to be as like well regarded, I think it's a testament to just like how good it is, obviously. But because it's not a genre people go for generally in the Oscars. You know, I think they're sometimes a little short-sighted. Like they tend to focus on like the same couple types of movies. And, you know, a lot of times like genre films are just left out, even when they're really good, you know, and obviously they've tried to fix that with adding like going up to 10 nominees, but like we all still know that like they're kind of nominating their 5 that they would normally nominate, and then like maybe 3 to 5 that are just like to make people shut up because they're popular. So this is like one of the few times I think that they like managed to get like popular and good and the same, you know, and get both of those covered. But like, so I actually really like this book as well. And I had read it first, I think, because I was trying to remember if I'd read it first or I read it after I saw the movie, but I did read it first because my parents didn't want me to see it. It was really popular, and they wanted to see it first because I wasn't allowed to see R-rated movies at a certain age until like my parents saw it, to make sure it wasn't too much. And they did end up letting me see it, which is kind of weird because like, you know, I was still fairly young. Not super young. I mean, I guess it wasn't that offensive or anything, but you know, my parents were a little stricter than a lot of people. But the thing is, like, what's weird, I think, too, is that there's, like, a lot of really awful things. You know, obviously, Hannibal Lecter does some pretty awful things. Buffalo Bill does some really gross things. But it is actually kind of subtle in terms of, like, it's nowhere near as violent as, you know, usually, like, these movies try to be. It was really a focus on the characters, and I think that's probably what elevated it to the level of like letting the Oscars kind of go for it, because the focus was on the story, on the characters, on like the sort of anxiety-inducing like tension between these characters, rather than on just like the gruesomeness of the crimes. But again, there's still some gruesome stuff going on. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not going out on a limb and saying this is great. It's obviously great. Okay, so the second half of this list is going to go from, we kind of had right there, we had 4 fairly popular things, one kind of small indie film. We're going to go to 2 pretty small indie films to 3 pretty popular movies. One kind of in the Scott Pilgrim level, like, I think a lot of people saw it. It wasn't super popular, but, and then 2 really popular. So the next one that is kind of a smaller movie, I think at this point it's probably not very small, because it was not only a movie, it was like nominated for a ton of awards, and now it's a musical, a Broadway musical, so it's not that small anymore. But this is Once, and if you haven't seen this, like, it's absolutely astounding. I mean, the music, to begin with, the music is fantastic in it. But basically it's about these 2 musicians in Dublin, and just like kind of friendship they form through music. What I really loved about this movie is, I mean, not only is the music great, is the writing great, is the characters and the acting great, but again, and I think this is so much more common in like the indie kind of smaller budget movies, is that the ending of this movie is just spot on. Like, it really gets it. And you can tell that like it's the kind of ending that they weren't looking to try to like please a mainstream audience. And actually, we did see the Broadway musical, and I think there were some elements of that I think were trying to like take the story and make it a little more palatable to like mass audiences, and as a result I just felt like it lost some of the heart of the actual story, but that's its own thing. So but like the ending of this movie just like hit me really hard, and I want to say, and I could be wrong, I want to say that the filmmaker who made this also made Sing Street, which I really loved as well. So I don't know, I could be wrong. So Once is it's a very like soft, subtle story about like 2 people and just this relationship they have. And it's not a romantic relationship. It's a friend relationship, like a friendship. It's just a partnership. I guess like meeting of the minds, like kind of more like an intellectual relationship, or like a sort of artistic relationship. And I just found it so incredibly like real. And like, as I've kind of hinted at a lot of times, like that's something that really works for me in movies. Like, and I talk about this in like on like book videos as well, is authenticity can like really get me. Like when I watch something, even if it's not like an experience I've had, I mean, I'm clearly not like a musician living in Dublin, but if I just feel like the characters feel just honest and authentic and real, like I just tend to strongly connect to movies that do that. And so this is one that I thought just did that exceptionally well. And so the next one is a French movie, and this is probably a film that I don't recommend very widely, mostly because it's incredibly upsetting and disturbing. And the film is Irreversible, and I love this movie. It's like on my list. I think it's fantastic. I've seen it, I think, 3 times now, so it's not like, like it's not an easy watch. And it's the kind of film, apparently there's like another version of it where they put it in like chronological order, which to me kind of takes away the whole impact of the film, but I don't know. I guess that's what they did. So, but the original film is told backwards. So it starts with this brutal murder, and you're not really sure what is going on. And then it's basically this relationship between this man and woman, and it ends at like where their relationship has fallen apart and they've like drifted apart, and it kind of goes backwards from this moment where like he is brutally killing someone to like their early days and the beginning of their relationship when it was soft and happy and cute and sweet. And it's so heartbreaking and so just gut-wrenching of like a story to tell it that way. And I mean, part of the reason for like their relationship falling apart is because at one point they are out together in Paris and she is walking alone and she's brutally raped, and the scene is intense. I mean, it's hard to say, like, is it graphic? Yes, it's graphic. It's not like, I want to say it's like, it's not over the top in terms of like showing a lot of things, but it is very disturbing. I mean, it's graphic. It doesn't like, it's not soft. They're not like censoring it at all. It's brutal. It's awful. And apparently when the film came out, like, people were like passing out in the theater and like walking out and like, so I mean, I guess it was like really upsetting. I don't know, like, I don't tend to get like that upset by these things just because like they happen, and I don't know, partially like maybe you'd think it would be triggering having like had experiences that, you know, I relate to in this, but I actually feel like in a way I don't find it triggering when it's like done, like, I don't want to say when it's done brutally, but like I kind of like, I like it less when like they try to sort of like tone it down, which I know sounds odd, but like it's a brutal act and it should be shown as a brutal act. And like if you aren't made uncomfortable by the scenes, then like I kind of feel like they're not doing their job, because you should be made uncomfortable. Because rape should never be something that like is easy to deal with and easy to just like watch, or, you know, to just be like, oh, well, we'll just gloss over it. I mean, it should make you feel like this makes you feel. And for the film, I think that's partially why the impact of this film is so good, is because it is very visceral, and like you experience a lot of these things, and because it goes backwards, you're already just like uncomfortable and just feel like grossed out, and just it's intense. And then when it starts getting happy at the end, when they like which is the beginning for them, it makes it just so much more painful. And again, I love painful, dark movies. So like, again, I don't recommend this to most people because I just think it's so hard to watch. But I also think as a film, I think it does what it set out to do, and it does it extremely effectively. So the next one, to move into a completely different mindset, is a ridiculous comedy. So yeah, they go from this very dark movie to this very funny comedy. And this is I Love You, Man. And this is Paul Rudd and Jason Segel. And I kind of talked about this, about authenticity. What I really loved about this movie, obviously it's funny, you know, which is nice because I like when comedies are funny. And I don't think that happens as much as it should. You know, sometimes like I'll see a trailer and I'll be like, oh, this movie looks so funny. And then you go see the movie and like all the jokes were in the trailer and it's not actually funny. Or everyone tells you it's funny and you see it and you're like, were there jokes in it? This one I thought was hilarious. I could not get over how funny this movie was. But part of it is because it's about essentially like adult men trying to form a friendship, you know, and basically it's because Paul Rudd's character has no friends and he's getting married and his fiance is kind of like, what's going on? That like you have no friends, and she has a good friend group and she feels like it's weird that he doesn't have a best man. He doesn't have like friends. And so he's trying to make friends with like, because he doesn't have any. And it's kind of, I just feel like it's so realistic because like as you get older, like it's so hard and it becomes this awkward thing because, like, you want to make friends, but you're an adult, and, like, who knows how to make friends at that age, you know? And it's just really funny, and, like, realistic, and it kind of also is, like, you know, I like a lot of films that are, like, deal with, you know, feminism and women's issues, and, you know, this is more of, like, a men's issues thing, but I do think it also, like, does address that, like, it's even harder for men. Like, it's hard for any adult, but especially for men, because they're not supposed to be vulnerable. They're not supposed to be, like, you know, admit to feeling, like, lonely or anything like that. And so I thought it was, like, it's, you know, it's one of those comedies that has, like, a lot of heart as well, but doesn't, like, make the, like, meaningful parts take too much of the, like, comedy away. So it's, like, it's more funny than heartfelt. So when the heartfelt stuff is there, it feels like even more real and better. So I just really enjoyed this movie. Next one's another comedy, and this is about as classic a comedy as you get. And this is Spinal Tap. And I didn't see this until I was older, and I'd already seen a few of the Christopher Guest, I believe that's his name. I'd already seen a few of his mockumentaries by the time I saw this one, and I loved them. I thought they were just hilarious. I love the concept. I mean, again, like, this is something that's, like, super popular in TV, but we don't see a ton of it in movies. You see it in horror, like the sort of fake found footage and stuff, but that sort of mockumentary film is just, like, not as common. But it is obviously, like, the workplace comedy is, like, The Office or whatever is, you know, is a whole thing in TV. And I liked this sort of, like, mockumentary style anyway. And this, if you don't know, I mean, I feel like at this point everyone has heard of this is Spinal Tap, but it's basically follows this rock band from the 70s or 80s, I guess it would be the 80s probably, through their tour. And they're just so ridiculous. And it's, I don't know if it is a product of its time. Like, I don't know if it's as funny if you don't remember sort of, like, the hair bands of the 80s and, like, 70s hard rock, or, you know, I don't know if you need to, like, be a fan of that era of music to really, really appreciate this movie, but I do remember as a kid, I thought Spinal Tap was a real band because I got to hear people reference it when I was younger. And that wasn't really necessarily, I didn't listen to a ton of that kind of music. I liked some of the hair bands and some of that stuff, but yeah, this movie is just unbelievably funny. And if you haven't seen it, like, I didn't know if I would like it anywhere near as much as I did, and it's fantastic. And, like, again, I'm not going out on a limb here. Everyone knows this movie's hilarious. It's, you know, considered one of the funniest movies of all time, but it's well deserved. And then the last one for this list, number 71, this is an animated movie, and another movie that, like, I've talked about in the last one with, like, last couple of videos with, like, Paddington, or I think there was another, the Lego movie, you know, movies that surprised me at how funny they were, and how, like, adult they were, when they're, like, you know, kids or family movies. And this is Shrek. And Shrek it's just brilliant. You know, obviously, I think it was such a good example of how you can make a movie that kids can love. Kids can enjoy every bit of it. And, like, 90% of the jokes and the comedy and, like, a lot of the stuff even that's happening is flying over their heads. But meanwhile, they're just having a good time because there's, you know, an ogre and, like, a donkey, and it's fun, right? And then, meanwhile, like, all the adults who have to go see this movie are, like, having a great time. And to be honest, I don't have kids, so I didn't even have to see it with kids. I just thought it looked funny. And at the time, this was when I was working at the movie theater, and I'd mentioned that in the last videos, how, you know, I got to go see all these movies for free. And so I was like, oh, let's just check this out, because I would see everything at that point. And I'm so glad I did, because it was, like, so funny. I mean, we watched it, and I think I've watched it, like, hundreds of times at this point. Like, it's so funny. It's still really funny. I mean, obviously at this point it's not as funny just because I've seen it a million times, but I mean, the sequel was funny. Puss in Boots is funny. Like, it's just, I mean, I think, like, I know, like, my husband and I still, like, quote things from this movie. And, you know, it's been 20 something years, right? And, like, it's just so entertaining. but it's smart. Like, the comedy, it's obviously there's a lot of satire, and it was brilliant. And, again, I always think that's such a smart thing, because, when you make a movie that kids find accessible, or for families, like, kids can watch, like, Frozen 17 400 times. Like, they don't care, right? Like, when they're really young. But, like, I mean, I'm sure parents get pretty sick of seeing, like, the 17th sequel to Frozen. They get sick of watching the Emoji Movie, which kids might think is cute, but they do not enjoy. And so it's so nice to see that, like, you can have a movie that can be really accessible to, like, everyone in a family, but has like, layers, like onions and parfait. But, like, Shrek has layers, and I just love that. And I had mentioned it again, like I said, with Paddington. Paddington was more just like a soft. It did have some satire, but like something like the Lego Movie, where you can kind of get those multiple levels of this movie. And so you could have seen Shrek when you were 6, and if you rewatch it when you're 15, and then you rewatch it when you're 30, you're just constantly, like, getting more enjoyment out of it. You can continue to enjoy it. So that's something I love about this. That's why it's on this list. And so I will then come back. So we're at 70. So I'll be coming back with, obviously the next third of movies or so. And then eventually we'll get into the really big ones. All right. Bye.